All right. Now let's get started on some more interesting, slightly higher insects than you saw last time. We're going to start with the Plecoptera and move on to the Mantophasmatodea. So let's start with the Plecoptera. Pleco means folded. Ptera means wings. So this refers to the pleated hind wings of these species, which fold underneath the front wings when they're at rest. You can see these pleated hind wings up here. These are commonly known as the stoneflies. This is due to their tendency to be resting on or underneath stones. The naiads of the Plecoptera usually live beneath stones in fast-moving, well-aerated water, and they feed on algae and other submerged vegetation. Now, they have to live in clean water. This means that this group is a great indicator of water pollution, and ecologists will often keep an eye on the stonefly population to make sure that water is, in fact, clean. Once this population begins to dip, ecologists can start looking for the source of whatever pollution is happening, whatever is lowering that oxygen. The adults tend to be found on the banks and the streams of rivers. Now, they have these very obvious robust wings, but they're really not active flyers. They tend to just sort of flutter around and walk a lot of places. Both the adults and the naiads have two caudal filaments. So these long filamentous things here. So here's the adult, here are the naiads. That make it very obvious that these are stoneflies. In many species, the adults do not have mouth parts. They're like Ephemeroptera in that case. They're most abundant in cool climates, and so they don't do very well when it warms up. So we got short-lived species, cool climates. They don't do really well when it's really hot out. All right, the next group are known as the Embedina, or the Embioptera, depending on what you're reading. Okay? These are commonly known as web spinners. This is because they have these four tarsi on their four legs, right there. Okay? Their four tarsi are modified with silk glands. This actually allows them to spin webs, much like spiders do. They use these skills to construct these silken tubes inside the soil. So you can see that right here. This is where these Embedina live. Okay, so they form these tubes and live in the soil in these silken tubes formed out of these four tarsi. The males have wings, and these wings are very flexible to allow them to move around. The females are completely wingless. So they tend to live in areas with a lot of leaf litter, they live under stones, under bark, and they tend to feed on dried plant material. So they are associated with decomposing things. This is what you tend to find if you pick up rocks or stones or logs or something out in the wilderness, and you see these weird, what look like spider webs underneath. If it's in a tube form, it's probably the web spinners. It's probably the Embedina. All right, the Zoropterans or Zoroptera. This is another one of those orders with no common name, right? So we just call them Zoropterans. Notice the suffix on this order, tera, that means wings, but there's an A in front of that suffix. This indicates this is an order without wings, Zoroptera. This is one of the smaller orders of insects. We only know of 32 described species all over the world. The adults are tiny, they're less than 4 millimeters long, and they have these beaded antennae. And they have 9 segments, or 9 beads in that antennae. The order is named for their lack of wings, yet some individuals do have them. The problem with these wings is they break off really easily near the base, and they leave only these little stubs behind. So when we first found this order, when we first described it, all the things that entomologists were finding were just completely lacking of wings, hence the name Zoroptera. Eventually, somebody found some with wings, but by that time it was just too late. Nobody bothered to change the order name. They tend to be found in rotting wood. They live under bark or in piles of old sawdust, that types of places. This indicates that they might be decomposers. They might feed on decomposing plant matter. However, very little is actually known about their biology. They don't cause any pest problems. They're not vectors of anything. They don't bother anybody. They're not super beneficial. So we just don't know a lot about them. All right. Up next are the Dermaptera. So the Dermaptera, these are commonly known as earwigs or pincher bugs or something of that nature because of the cerci present on the last abdominal segment. They look like pinchers. These cerci allow you to tell the males from the females. So the males have these large, robust cerci, look like really large pinchers, while the females have straight, smaller pinchers coming off of that last abdominal segment. So this is a male, and this is a female. These in the females are used for laying eggs, for moving things around, and they're used for protection in the males. The adults, especially the males, are going to curl their abdomen up and over their thorax in a stance reminiscent of scorpions, if you really look at it, when they are threatened. The order literally means skin wings. This is because the wings are very, very leathery or very skin-like. The insects have chewing mouthparts. They feed mostly on dead vegetation. They can attack green leaves and fruit and sometimes small insects. So sometimes they are considered pests in the garden. You see these especially on very tender young shoots, little new growth. They'll feed on that, and that can become a pain in the butt when you're trying to grow a nice garden in your backyard. They do have two pairs of wings, so their name is a little misleading. Notice that A in front of the ptera. It's mostly from the derma right there. So that can be a little weird when you're thinking about pulling this apart to try to learn their name. Okay. So they have these skin-like wings, but they can be very short, really only covering part of the thoracic region. Now, the adults have some interesting parental characteristics. They exhibit a form of parental care after the eggs are laid. The females will create a little den, usually under a rock or under soil, where she will lay her eggs, and then she just sticks around and cares for those eggs until they hatch. She makes sure that the eggs are protected, and she'll attack anything that tries to come into that den. She'll use her mouth parts to actually take care of the eggs. So during the day, what she'll do, she'll pick up each individual egg and she's going to clean that egg to keep it free from a particular type of fungus that likes growing on these eggs. So she picks up each one of these eggs in her mouth, she cleans it, and then she places it back down in the pile, moves on to the next one. So studies have shown that this cleaning of the eggs, this cleaning behavior, results in a much higher survivorship of the young. Studies have also shown that the adults really aren't very good at determining what is an egg and what isn't. Scientists did this experiment where they just replaced the eggs with super tiny rocks, little pebbles. The female just spent her time cleaning the rocks of fungus, just like they were her eggs. Now, once the nymphs hatch, the female is going to go out and find them food until they are old enough to go out and scavenge and hunt for themselves. If the female dies, the nymphs are just going to feed on her body. They're going to perform cannibalism until they can go out and find their own food. Up next are the Grilloptera. The Grilloptera are named because of their weird looks. So grill means cricket, and blatta means cockroach. So this kind of looks like a cricket and a cockroach mated and had offspring. They look so much like crickets, in fact, that some researchers actually group them into Orthoptera, group them in that group with the crickets. Others believe that these insects are the only survivors of a primitive lineage that gave rise to the Orthoptera. So they think they might be an ancestor of modern-day crickets. They are very closely related to Dermaptera when we look at the genetic code, and they're also incredibly rare. We only know of about 26 species on Earth. They have filiform antennae, they're mandibulate, they have these hypognathous mouthparts. You remember what that means, pointing downwards? And they are completely wingless. They're known as ice crawlers or rock crawlers commonly. This is because they are found only at high elevations in caves or near ice or snow in the mountains. This we find most commonly in areas like Asia and North America. We don't know of any species that are found in the southern hemisphere. Most species are most active below freezing, and they will completely die if they reach temperatures above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So they hate this warm temperature. They die in that warm temperature. They need that cold. Because they live in this cold, they grow very, very slowly. A single generation can take upwards of 7 full years. So the adults, what we know about them, they're scavengers. They tend to feed on the surface of snow fields. They find decomposing food on that surface. They might go under rocks, or they go near melting ice to find decomposing organic matter. All right, the Mantophasmatodea. So this sounds like both the mantids, right? The mantid insects, and the Phasmatodea, the stick insects. So it's sort of a mishmash of both of those names. Okay? This is the newest order of insect. It was described in 2002. In comparison, the Grilloptera, those ice crawlers, is the next newest. It was described back in 1915. So we don't often find new full orders of insects. We find a lot of new species all the time, but new orders are very rare. So 2002, the most recent new full order of insects, the Mantophasmatodea. Now, they are commonly known as gladiator bugs. This is because the entomologists that found them thought that they looked like those armored fighters in the movie Gladiator. We're nerds. Now, there are only 8 known species in this order, so this is by far the rarest of the insects out there. They're found only in Tanzania, Namibia, and South Africa, and in these areas, they're known as nocturnal predators. So what they do is they hide in crevices and clumps of grass, and they prey upon spiders and other insects that come walking by. All right, let me know if you have any questions.